From the CUBE studios in Palo Alto and Boston, bringing you data-driven insights from the CUBE and ETR. This is Breaking Analysis with Dave Vellante.
The shift to service as software will bring learning curve advantages, software-like marginal economics, and winner-take-most dynamics to all companies across every industry, not just tech vendors. And we believe those firms that can more quickly jump on the AI experience curve will see substantially increased benefits relative to their competitors. However, our research suggests that data management complexity and lack of adequate data protection are key risk factors for chief AI officers, CTOs, and those line of business heads that are architecting their company's AI futures. In particular, our survey data indicates nearly 70% of firms protect less than half of their AI-generated data, the very data that will deliver the competitive advantage promised by AI. Moreover, there seems to be quite a dissonance between the perceived and actual maturity of AI capabilities, with serious gaps in areas like cyber, regulatory compliance, governance, and data integration capabilities that we believe will challenge AI outcomes. In this breaking analysis, we bring you the zero-loss enterprise, data resilience as an AI service layer. In this episode, Christophe Bertrand and other members of the CUBE research team, including Bob Laliberte, Paul Nashawaty, Jackie McGuire, and Scott Hebner, will present their analysis and specific results of a recent study designed to gain insight on how data protection is evolving in the AI era, and the degree to which critical AI data are being protected today. We'll cast an eye towards what has to happen in the future to ensure that firms' most critical assets, i.e. their data, are protected, and we'll examine the practical difficulties of achieving a zero-loss enterprise in the future. Christophe Bertrand, welcome.
Great to be here, Dave.
Okay, just real quick, Alex, if you bring up the About This research slide, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Christophe, you purposefully went after IT infrastructure pros, and it's interesting here, tape is not dead. We always kind of joke about that tongue in cheek, but it's not. But you know, share your intent of this research, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. We had a great conversation or set of conversations during the Data Protection and AI Summit earlier in the summer. So we went out and did more research on the topic in North America, 300 respondents, very well qualified. And I really wanted to know what data protection, IT professionals, infrastructure specialists are thinking in terms of protecting the nascent AI infrastructure, as well as leveraging AI itself as part of their processes. And really the findings are absolutely fascinating when you think about what's going on right now. I will just say this, hang on to your seats, because the data is going to definitely show some interesting surprises.
Well, let's dive in. This is a data-heavy breaking analysis. We love data. Alex, bring up the next slide. The title, AI deployments are maturing. Christophe asked the respondents, how would you describe your organization's level of AI maturity? Again, this is 300. And what really stuck out to me here, of course, some are maturing, it's in process, but this second bar, mature, AI is completely integrated into operations. I mean, absolutely blows me away.
Dave, Christophe, thank you for having me. The app dev impact on cyber resiliency and data protection and the service as software is really is a shift in how enterprise software is working. The old SaaS model where people operating tools is giving way to services as software world, right? This is really becoming where software is becoming the operator itself. AI-driven systems not just observe, but they decide, act, and learn. This creates massive opportunity. What we're seeing is a $4.6 trillion kind of opportunity according to Forbes. But this also transforms security, resiliency, and the technical issues that really matter about trust and accountability. So what does this mean? What does this mean for developers, right? It means that the coding intent, not just function, but every action has to be authorized, auditable, and reversible, right? DevOps pipelines evolving from shipping software to validating automated behavior. And observability moves from uptime to in casual tracing to basically understanding what actions happen, not just what happened, right? So platform engineering is a new stewards of governance. Their mission is to secure the model control plane, enforce policy runtimes, and really ensure that every agent decision can be proven and authentic and reversible, right? So what we're seeing in our CUBE research, right, we're seeing 92% of developers need modern platforms to innovate, while 87% of IT leaders are really looking at viewing observability as essential. Yet tool sprawl is and poor data quality remains to be a major barrier in all of this, right? So the bottom line for this, cyber resiliency, data protection, and app dev now lives everywhere from code to cloud. The organizations are looking to bake resiliency into every layer of the systems that will own the future of digital business. And because this new era is about resiliency, it is the business model. So when we're looking at all of this, I think that, the context of shifting from service to software is moving beyond SaaS. We're seeing that's a huge opportunity. We're seeing cyber resiliency. The imperative is security and resilience. That's really hitting the authorization, auditability, and reversibility across the developers and across the application lifecycle. We're seeing developer transformation as developers are defining actions, not just APIs, with clear contact and rollback rules as part of this. Model prompts and data pipelines become versioned and governance that are really become a dependency. And unit testing also is evolving to validate into intent safety, right? We're seeing DevOps is reimagined where pipelines validate behavioral compliance, and not just deployment success. No longer just push the big green button and get the code out the door. It's actually about those behavioral compliance. New resiliency metrics, MTD, mean time to detect unauthorized access or actions, and MTTR, mean time to reverse. Those are really things that are coming out, and we're seeing chaos agents for testing as part of this whole cycle as well. So platform engineering and governance, big part of it, data-driven insights, right? We see that 92% of developers need modern tools for innovation. We see that 87% of IT leaders call for observability as essential, and 75% face observability tools for all. 81% of CIOs view sustainability as a software decision maker, and cloud native modernization cuts carbon footprints by 30%. Lots happening here, lots going on. And, I think the winners from services software era is software is the business now. And those who can master resilience, where trust and transparency become automated and automation is part of their coverage. Really a lot's happening here, really exciting times.
I think, Alex, if you bring up the next slide and then we can go back and forth. So Christophe, you suggest here in the next one, what are your top challenges? That this list of challenges kind of underscores that there is a clear lack of maturity. You can see high costs, security of cyber exposures, all these challenges that people face. And Alex, if you go to the next slide, this is from ETR, their latest drill down survey. Thinking about your organization's AI initiatives to date, how would you describe the ROI outcomes your organization has seen for each approach, building in-house solutions and buying external vendor solutions? And you can see the sustained ROI at scale is much closer to that MIT study where it said only 5% of the deployments in production are seeing ROI. So this, Christophe, kind of really underscores that dissonance that we were talking to up front. And if you want us to bring up back any of those slides, please let Alex know.
Oh yeah, no, I think we've seen, I think the general idea, right? First of all, let me start by the people saying it's totally integrated. They're not saying it's totally integrated across every part of the business. But remember, these are IT infrastructure professionals, and I think there may be a little bit of enthusiasm here going on. But really the takeaway is this. You take a step back, you realize AI is unavoidable. It is being implemented. It is in flight. It doesn't really matter at this point. It's going to happen. The question is, how will it happen, and will it happen correctly? Number two, the fact that people say it is fully mature, again, I think it's a bit.
If you would, sorry to interrupt, but Alex, bring up that AI deployments maturing slide, sure. 2 slides back. This one. Go ahead, Christophe.
Yeah, it may very well be in some processes, and I think those are very limited in terms of scope. I can absolutely see some of the early adopters, people who have really got some critical processes in place, figuring out some level of AI that's nicely integrated, but it's not like the whole thing is run by agents. That's really the grain of salt I want to add to this. But it should give us an inkling that, again, AI is here to stay. People want to see some benefit out of it. Yet, you look at the next slide that talks about the challenges as you brought it up earlier, and what I see is very simple. And I kind of give it away in the title and with my subtitle here, which is, well, you have some traditional IT infrastructure type of issues. Number one, cost comes as the top one, but you look at the list, and by the way, people had to pick 3 answers here. So it's kind of a popularity contest, or pick your poison, if you will. But what it gives you is a pecking order. The top 2 are very, very telling, very telling. Cyber security, cyber resilience, big issue, and of course costs. And then you can see all sorts of maturity-related type of topics. I've seen this many times through the years. I mean, Dave, the first time we talked about maturity issues was when I was on the vendor side. It was, well, too many years ago. We were talking about cloud. And then we had the same discussion where we talked about virtualization. And the same conversation when we talked about containers. Integration issues, ROI issues, et cetera, not ready for prime time. And I think we're seeing this happening here. There's a big difference, though. There seems to be an acceleration of investment. There seems to be an arms race, yet, to your point from the research from ETR, our partner ETR, and other research we've seen out there in the field, clearly ROI is not obvious. And that's because you have 2 issues, or maybe 3, that are happening concurrently, in my opinion. Number one, well, the fact that I think the scope, early implementation scope, is limited. It may be mature in some small scope, but it definitely is not across the board. Number 2 is scale. Everything is fun and games until you add scale at the end of the sentence. I think a lot of deployments are not at scale, and people are struggling with it. Here's why. They don't even know, in my opinion, where the data is to begin with that they should use. It's not compliant. It's not governed. And we've seen that in the challenges. They're not getting the guidance they need. There are lots of exposures, and people who are getting more smarter about this realize they can't just unleash all of this just like that. So that's what we're dealing with. It feels like we've built this wonderful, power plant. We're mastering nuclear power, or trying to, but we don't have all of the controls in place. Now that's a dangerous game to play.
Bob Laliberte, what role does the network play here?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. I mean, when you think about the AI era, the network is going to assume a significantly more strategic role. It's no longer just simple transport. It's really becoming that foundational fabric that determines how quickly companies can learn, adapt, and scale their AI capabilities. When you think about this new model, data movement is the product pipeline. Every AI-driven service relies on that efficient flow of data between training environments, inference nodes, and users at the edge. So it's really going to require programmable, API-driven, AI-orchestrated networks, right, are really going to become what's essential. And I think the firms that are adopting these architectures with telemetry-rich fabrics and closed-loop automation will really gain software-like economics and accelerate up that AI experience curve faster than their competitors. The striking part is that our research highlights that major risk. 70% of firms protect less than half of their AI-generated data. So this exposes a significant gap, and not just in storage protection, but across the entire data transport layer. So as AI workloads become more distributed, data protection must be built directly into the network, ensuring that every packet of AI data is secure, governed, and compliant as it moves. I mean, ultimately, the network has become both the AI supply chain and the security perimeter. So companies that align their data protection, network architecture, and AI operation strategies, they'll not only mitigate risk, they'll create a competitive advantage in this AI-driven economy.
Thank you for that. So the big topic, of course, in the industry, we always talk about training, and everybody's talking about how inference is really where all the action is going to be. People talk about the shift from training to inference. I really look at it as, inference is really on the rise, and it's going to create so much more data and so much more need for compute. So this next slide, it's titled, AI data is a key target for cyber attackers. It's so interesting, Christophe. You said, the question was, you mentioned security or cyber exposures. To your knowledge, has your AI infrastructure been exposed to one or more of the following? So 72 out of the 300 answered this, so almost 25%. And boom, data inference right at the top. I mean, this is the hottest area right now in AI, and cyber attackers are going after it, as well as other points on this slide. Please elaborate.
Right. Well, first things first, you look at this, take a step back. The top three, and there may be some overlap, by the way. This is just, for me, I'm trying to figure out what is resonating with you when you say, I have a cyber exposure. And you can see the top three are data related. So I think that's the first point. Very, very critical to know that it's all about data. Something that a lot of AI leaders, vendors, hyperscalers, data platforms, they don't really talk about that much. So what I've done here is really double click on earlier research we did on cyber resilience and say, okay, let's see what that does in the world of AI, even if it's early stages, even if it's not deployed everywhere, even if you still think you have ROI issues. What are you really exposed to? And remember, by the way, all of these attacks that people have said they've experienced, again, there may be some overlap. I'm just looking for what resonates terms-wise. Guess what? A lot of these attacks come from cyber attackers who are themselves extremely well-versed in leveraging AI for attacks. So you get this crazy scenario where you have AI-equipped cyber attackers attacking your AI investments. And now I'm proposing that, well, you actually need to AI empower your protection just the same, because if you don't do that, you're going to be at a loss for sure. And looking at, again, at these challenges and these attacks, those are pretty far-reaching. It can literally make your whole investment implode on itself. I mean, if the models are affected or can't produce the results you can trust because you can't trust the data or you can't trust the model, then what have you really achieved? And what are the risks you've actually incurred? Remember, this is in a context of, at some point, agents will be connecting to each other, making decisions. You're going to have to also prove causality, how you reach decisions. The implications are really far-reaching, and that tells me we're in an environment where we have this arms race, and we all want to run, and I think we're barely crawling.
Okay, Jackie McGuire has thoughts on the implications for data compliance and some of the unspoken truths that we need to pay attention to. Jackie?
Hey, Dave. So one of the reasons I think that people are not talking about data itself as much is that I don't think anybody really wants to take into account fully the amount of data that, agentic AI and other forms of generative AI are going to spit out. Every training model that you have will likely need to be retained for some period of time. So if you're a highly regulated industry, for example, healthcare. So healthcare, you're required to retain records for anywhere from about 6 to 10 years. So Medicare, for example, requires that you retain records for 10 years from the date of service. Sarbanes-Oxley in the financial industry requires 7 years of retention for a lot of documents. There are many, many industries that are regulated to an extent that they need to store a lot of data. And we still don't know how this data is going to be treated, whether it's going to be treated as a human interacting with your customers, patients, vendors, or machine-to-machine interaction. And absent new regulation, we're going to have to store a lot of data for a really long time. And so I think that is kind of one of the things that we don't want to admit. And while people are speculating that we'll be able to supercharge labor or unfortunately maybe replace it with AI, I think we may be also replacing it with a lot of costs for data retention and data storage. And then of course, you have to store all of that data and secure it. And encryption, post-quantum cryptography is advancing pretty rapidly. And if businesses aren't planning ahead to 10 years for that Medicaid, Medicare data, it may very well be stored in a manner that's not secure if it's not stored in a very secure physical manner. So these are just many of the compliance and regulatory issues that I think we maybe don't want to talk about. And then, of course, the cost that goes along with hiring people to ensure all of those things are being followed and keep their eye on exponentially growing volumes of data. So it'll be a data jungle, and I think no one wants to admit that it's not going to be easy to navigate.
So this next data set was really fascinating to me. Alex, if you bring it up, the backup of AI data, a long way to go. Using your best estimate, what % of your organization's total volume of AI-generated data does your organization include in regular backups? I had to highlight the 0% don't know. I mean, every respondent had an answer. I've never seen that before. And so that says there's real clarity. So I gives me an added, boost of trust in this data, but you can see that almost 70% are to the left of 50%. And so, Christophe, as Jackie was saying earlier, there's going to be so much data generated, and it's so important for organizations to retain that data. Financial services, 7 years, healthcare, 7 to 10 years, et cetera. And they're not even backing this up. They're not even protecting it. So if they are asked to recreate that data and it's not there, what's going to happen? Your thoughts on this survey response?
Yeah, we actually know what's going to happen. It's definitely going to be cost and operational efficiency issues. But I think you're bringing up a good point. 0% said they didn't know. It's because by design, this research was focused on people who knew and people who know. It's IT professionals. It's people who deal with the infrastructure. And essentially, and I will say it very bluntly, they get stuck with having to support AI infrastructure and storage and data. So and naturally, they think about everything they have to do, from security, networking, definitely some very important topic to talk about that Bob certainly has great opinions on and research on. And more importantly, I think what it shows here in this research is that we've made all of this investment. We're generating a lot of data with AI, and that's just the beginning, by the way. This is nothing compared to what it will be in the future. And we're not even protecting it. So it's an afterthought. Now, by the way, I've seen this over and over again through the years where new workload, best practices are behind and you have to catch up. I think this is a different one. And I call AI workload. It's really a lot more than that. It's a whole new apparatus. It's a new way of doing business. I think the onus now should be placed on going back to the basics. Where is your data? Is it properly managed? Is it ready for AI? And then is it protected accordingly as you start injecting it into your AI models and applications and agentic frameworks? And then is all of that also protected in terms of the outputs and in terms of all the relationships that come into play for compliance, for just business resumption reasons, et cetera? So in a sense, all of a sudden, this AI infrastructure is creating another data monster, not just for its own purpose, for AI, for better decisions or faster decisions, but just to protect itself, again, against a backdrop of cyber attackers going after the data itself. And all of this, I say this, again, is at scale.
Well, and we know that cyber attacks are expensive. We know that losing data is expensive. It hurts productivity. It can hurt. Put you out of compliance. It can damage reputation. On and on. And especially if it's leaked to competitors. So, Alex, bring up this next slide. AI data loss hurts the wallet. This we know. Again, 0% said don't know, as Christophe was saying, by design, because these people know what would happen if you lost AI data that was not backed up. And Christophe, this is not pretty, and then the reason I highlighted this one says, the first one, personnel consequences, you're going to get fired, okay? And then there's compliance consequences. You're going to be out of compliance. So it's damage to your organization. That's after all the, the hard costs and soft costs around productivity and the data loss will affect. Your thoughts, please.
Right. So a couple of things. I'm betting that when we ask this question again in a couple of years, or maybe even next year, compliance will shoot way up as AI gets more and more deployed, and people finally start getting more ROI. They're also going to find out there is a lot more risk and a lot more exposure that kicks in. So I expect compliance, although it's ranking a bit low here in the popularity contest, to shoot up. But you're right, still a big number. And yes, of course, you can lose your job, which is a problem because you may not have gotten the right guidance. You may not be in the full loop of what's going on. And all of a sudden, you have to provide for backup and recovery for an environment that itself is constantly evolving. We're talking about millions and millions, if not billions, of investment in compute and in storage. That's a lot of data to back up. And I think more importantly, what you're seeing is this what used to be this traditional, boring thing of backing up and really thinking about having recoverability has become something that's more critical than ever. So again, I go back to best practices. If data is going to be the lifeblood of your business, and certainly the lifeblood of the AI processes that it powers, let's not forget that, then backup and the ability to recover, more importantly, regardless of the the causes, likely cyber protection is a big motivation. Well, if that's going to be the case, then backup has to be a top priority. I know it's kind of an inversion of things in many ways. People are thinking about the outcomes. Here I'm telling you, no. Think about the source. Go back to the basics. Go back to best practices. This is really where we're at, or where we need to be. And again, watch out for that compliance number. I expect it to go up significantly.
As technology becomes, more deeply embedded and more ubiquitous, it becomes increasingly important that we have our data protected. I remember the days when there were actually manual tape, people hanging tape, and that's how you would go when something went bad. You'd go load up tape, and so now it's the last resort. But and then you remember the tape pickers, the libraries, the tape libraries. So we've seen automation and backup for years. Alex, if you bring up the next slide, using AI for data protection, the most impactful use cases, the top one is automated backup and recovery. So because people have always looked at this task as an expense, even though they need it to get their critical data, but we're starting to see, Christophe, automation now throughout the data protection process. Your thoughts on this?
Right. And this is the other side of the coin. The research was about data protection for AI, but also AI for data protection. So now we're flipping that coin. We're looking at how do you improve your posture from a recovery perspective. And clearly, automation and security, and here this was pick one. And you can look at the question at the bottom. Everybody responded. And automation. Why? Because it's just so much data. It's so complex. A lot of IT operations folks are generalists. They're not PhDs in backup, and they're not necessarily PhDs in AI infrastructure, at least not yet. So the whole thing requires a lot more automation. So this is a signal for the vendors in the data protection space, in the cyber recovery space, and by extension, data management space. This is an important set of data here. And by the way, our research includes literally what I call the RFP slide that tells you as a vendor what you should be focused on based on the feedback from end users. The other point you mentioned is tape. Just as an aside here, we're not covering it today. We will, I think, in maybe another analysis. We do have a lot of tape data with this research. I believe tape has a fantastic future. Now, you may think, what? Tape? What is that? Some people may not even know tape, but the truth is, you think about all the data that's going to be generated with AI, it's going to have to go somewhere. And I think there's a big secret, maybe a dirty little secret, I think it's a dirty big secret, that a lot of AI players are not really telling you, is that AI is going to generate a lot of data, and a lot of data about the data, metadata around, and a lot of it will be around proving compliance and causality and things like that. Where is that all going to go? How much is that all going to cost? At some point, you're going to realize you need an advantage economically to be able to do this at scale, and tape is likely going to come in. Our research, by the way, clearly shows that tape is critical for AI, for many of those very informed decision makers here. Stay tuned. We'll cover that in, I think, a different analysis, but it is important too. So net is what? AI, as a feature set, has a very important role to play in support of data governance and data protection, as much as protecting the nascent AI infrastructure itself.
So 2 quick points. One is on tape. We know the hyperscalers use a lot of tape. They consume tons of it. And disk, spinning disk as well. You look at Seagate, right? The companies do Seagate in many ways is an AI play now. But of course, people might complain they're not getting the valuations of the AI plays. But yet again, Christophe, the storage hierarchy lives. But the second point is, the earlier data that we shared talked about AI and being a big part of the automation process. This next slide, more AI and backup recovery, means more investment. There's always inflection points in the industry where people have said, we are going to reconsider our primary data protection vendor. It happened in virtualization. It happened in cloud. It's sort of really happening still in SaaS and now AI. And this slide really sort of underscores that. What's your forward-looking strategy with regard to leveraging AI features and capabilities? And the first one says 51%. We're going to invest in data protection and favor vendors that embed AI into their solutions. So that really hammers home your earlier point about where vendors should be investing.
Absolutely. And I think 51% is a very, very big number for what maybe 2-3 years ago was an afterthought. Clearly, it's an afterthought when you think about how much people are actually backing up their AI infrastructure. But now they realize, oh, hang on, now I need to do a lot more with less because there's going to be a lot more data, even more so than before. So yeah, I want vendors who really understand how to make my life easy, because I'm not insensitive to the benefits of AI for automation, for better support, for making maybe more informed decisions about my recovery strategies, or even creating those disaster recovery plans, et cetera. So I think what you're seeing here is, you're right, there's a shift in the market. And I think for vendors who are in the space of generally what I would call cyber recovery, data management, and those spaces are merging, you can't just AI wash your message. You have to deliver the goods, and you have to show me as an end user how you're leveraging AI in a way that's going to be smart, that's going to be secure, that's going to be intelligent, to be able to do more with less and to better protect my environment. And I think you brought a very good point around this inflection points. Mentioned virtualization earlier. SaaS is still a pretty open field, by the way. I think all of these are combining. So expect the use of AI for better protection of the data space in general as being an absolute requirement. 51% today. I expect that the number that we're saying here to probably jump to 75, 80% in the next 18 months to 24 months, and at which point I will need to be asking the question, because it will be obvious what people need to do. So mark my words on this. The survivors in what we call the backup and recovery space, which is now the cyber recovery space, candidly, will be the vendors who really smartly integrate AI into their solution and expand functionally to do a lot more around data management and cyber. We're already seeing some of these moves happening from an equity standpoint, an M&A standpoint, but it's about to become an arms race.
Scott Hebner has fresh data on trust and governance. Scott, please share.
Yes, we do. We just conducted a big survey in September. So just hot off the presses, if you will, of 625 AI professionals. They were pre-qualified across 13 industries and 9 professions and 3 countries. So a pretty comprehensive survey. It is called the Agentic AI Futures Index. And it was eye-opening. Learned a lot of new things that were kind of intuitive, I think, but now we have some data to support it. So let me start with a high-level storyline here about what really jumped out at me, which is the state of trust and governance frameworks in enterprises. So Alice, if you can just bring up the chart here that sort of tells the story. What you're looking at here is the trust indexes, which is from 0 to 5, and obviously 5 being the most mature. And when it comes to trust, the index said it's about 2.4 out of 5. So a little bit on the low side, not a disaster, but the telling data point there was only 49% of AI professionals and end users actually trust the outcomes coming from AI agents. So a lot of work to do there to fix that. Take a step further about how they are doing it. If you look at today's state of things in terms of trust and governance frameworks that are deployed, only 29% have enterprise-wide standardized frameworks in place. So we gave a maturity index of 2.8, a little bit better because they're trying to do something about it. But when you look at where it's all heading, the actual investment planned over the next 18 months, the index jumps to 3.8, with 73% saying that they plan either significant or strategic investments in trust and governance. So clearly there is a movement to fix this problem. If you go to the next chart here, so what is under the covers of all this? What are they trying to fix? Well, you notice what jumps out at the very top here, right? Data provenance, assurance, protection. 72% are prioritizing data as the top control. Because after all, data is the lifeblood of AI. And, no data, no good AI. So I think that's the state of things right now. There is a trust problem. They're immature in the deployment of their trust frameworks and governance frameworks, but a huge amount of investment coming, and it's going to start folks with a focus on data.
Okay, so picking up on some of that data that Scott just shared, let's go to our last slide, which is responsible use of AI governance and the challenges around that. What are the main challenges your organization encounters when implementing and managing its data governance initiatives and the responsible use of AI? Again, very low, don't know, very low other, zero other. I mean, you kind of nailed it with this one. Take us through this and then we'll wrap, Christophe.
Right. So first of all, as I said, cyber exposure, cyber recovery, cyber risk in general. I mean, that's what keeps selling today. So please, as an end user watching us, keep investing. You pretty much have no choice, and it's a good investment for sure. And for vendors, keep expanding and investing, adding capabilities to your solution, whether you're in data governance, data management, or kind of traditional backup recovery, expanding into cyber recovery now. But I want to, point out a couple of points here. Complexity from a regulation standpoint, compliance in general, and data governance. And Scott, certainly brought up some very good points here. Those are absolutely critical. You need to have the ability to secure the data as well as govern it and manage it from a compliance standpoint. Those are the requirements to build trust. And then you have, of course, to trust other components in AI. For sure, but at a minimum, this is the baseline. And I think, again, this was one of those popularity contest questions, kind of pick your poison. You see the lineup. You see that all of these, they're a bit different. There may be a little bit of overlap here and there. That's by design, see what people would react to. But you look at all of these, it's a tall order, and it's a lot of challenges. And by the way, in the middle there, but it's doing really well at 25%, is the fact that people have a huge problem leveraging data in SaaS environments. SaaS vendors are trying to keep their data in their own little SaaS environments and telling them, hey, I have agents to do all of that. Look at Dreamforce, Agentforce. We're going to hear a lot about that. But is that a good idea? Shouldn't you try to suckle up that data out and do something with it? I mean, it's a question. We'll see what the right answer is. So to sort of summarize, really what I want to say with this research is this. No compliant data, no cyber resilient data equals no AI data at scale, of course.
That does sum it up, Christophe. I want to thank you for sharing this excellent research. I know you put a lot of time into constructing the questions and targeting the right audience. So really fabulous research. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
You bet. Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Thanks to Alex Myerson, who's on production and manages our podcast, and Ken Schiffman as well. Kristen Martin and Cheryl Knight help get the word out on social media and in our newsletters. And Rob Hof is our editor-in-chief over at siliconangle.com. All these episodes are available as podcasts wherever you listen. Just search Breaking Analysis Podcast. We publish each week on thecuberesearch.com and siliconangle.com. And you can email me at david.vellante@siliconangle.com or DM me at dvellante. Get in touch with any of our analysts or comment on our LinkedIn post if you got some ideas for topics. And check out etr.ai. They got some great survey data around the enterprise tech business. This is Dave Vellante for theCUBE Research Insights, powered by ETR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Breaking Analysis.